Scrum is a lightweight framework. It is founded into two theories. First theory is lean thinking, which focuses on eliminating waste in any process. The other theory is the theory of empiricism. Theory of empiricism states that knowledge comes from past experience and use factual data to optimize predictability for the future. Scrum aims to solve complex problems using adaptive solutions. So how does Scrum do that? Scrum defines three pillars to be able to achieve that goal. Those pillars are transparency. Transparency means that the work being done should be visible not only just to the people doing the work, but also to the people receiving the work. The second pillar is inspection. So the team should always inspect the work and see if that aligns with the product goal that they have set for themselves. And as you can see, the relation between those pillars is without transparency, inspection is really cannot happen or is meaningless. And then the last pillar is adaptation. And again, adaptation is a result of continuous inspection. So when the team inspect the work and they realize it deviate from the goal they set for themselves, they can or they should adapt their work accordingly. Okay, so how does this work? It all starts with the Scrum team, which is a small team of professional, 10 people or less, working together in a sprint. So how does the Scrum team looks like and what they actually do in a sprint? Scrum team, as we said, a small group of 10 people or less. Each Scrum team should have Scrum Master, Product Owner, and a group of developers. Scrum team should have two key characteristics. First is being self-managing, meaning that only the Scrum team, they decide among themselves what they're going to work on, how they're going to work, and how they're going to split the work themselves. And the second characteristics is that they should be cross-functional, meaning that they should have all the necessary skills within the team to generate a valuable and usable increment every sprint. To be able to do that and to be a self-managing and cross-functional, Scrum defines 5 values for the Scrum team to abide with while working and collaborating and communicating together. So those values are commitment, focus, respect, openness, and last is courage. What does now the Scrum team do in a sprint to generate a useful increment every sprint? Sprint is the first event, and by definition, it is the containing event of the all other events. Sprint is kicked off by a sprint planning, which is another time-boxed event to a maximum of 8 hours for a 1 month sprint. During the sprint planning, the team answered three questions. Why, which translate like why this sprint is important, which basically translate on defining a sprint goal. The what are the product backlog items that the team should work on satisfy the sprint goal. So we have a product backlog, which is an ordered list of all the work needs to be done by the product. And during sprint planning, after answering the what, the team answer the third question is which is the how. How the work that the team selected, the product backlog items, is going to be decomposed and into tasks and work on by the team. And since we mentioned the concept of self-managing, so this how is mainly kept for the developers to decide. The why normally comes from a product owner and during the sprint planning, as the team selects work from the product backlog item, they start to build this the sprint backlog. So product backlog items are moved from here to build the sprint backlog. At the end of the sprint planning, the sprint backlog becomes the first or better, the second artifact that the team should maintain. And the sprint goal is actually the commitment to build and commit to delivering the sprint backlog. The product backlog, though, is actually the first artifact required to be maintained in the Scrum framework. And every product backlog should have a product goal, which is serve as the North Star, the ultimate goal. It could change every quarter, it would evolve as the product evolves. And product backlog is not, it's important to know that it's not an event, but it's a continuous effort and accountability for the product owner to effectively manage the product backlog to maximize the value of the product. Once a sprint planning is concluded and a sprint backlog is developed, the team starts doing the work. And then comes the third event in the Scrum, which is the daily Scrum. Daily Scrum are time boxed to a maximum of 15 minutes every day. The daily Scrum is mandatory only for the developers, where they basically collaborate together and align, inspect, adapt their work to see they are, aligned to meet the sprint goal or not. And then the team continues working on the product backlog item, building the increment until we reach towards the end of the sprint. We reach the fourth event, which is sprint review. Sprint review is also time boxed to a maximum 4 hours for a 1 month sprint. Sprint review is attended by the whole Scrum team plus all the product stakeholders. During sprint review, the Scrum team, demonstrate and inspect to the product stakeholders the increment that they have generated. And this increment now becomes our third artifact that should be delivered and maintained by the team. During sprint review, the team demonstrated the increment and inspected against the commitment they set for themselves in the term of a written statement of the how the increment would look like, which is called the definition of done. At the conclusion of the sprint review, the product stakeholder or the product owner can either inspect, accept the sprint for release or postpone it for a future release. But the most common outcome from a sprint review is a feedback loop for additional modification, new user stories that goes back to the product backlog. And then finally, the sprint concludes with the sprint retrospective. Sprint retrospective is also time boxed to a maximum of 3 hours for a 1 month sprint. And sprint retrospective is only attended by the immediate Scrum team members, during which the whole team reflect and inspect and adapt in their overall practices, the way they collaborate, while abiding by, remember, the Scrum values: commitment, focus, respect, openness, and courage, and to look for better ways to how they can enhance and optimize their performance for the next sprint.